context-free language, and the grammar to represent or describe these languages CFG, that is context-free grammars, and the machine or the abstract machine that can recognize this context-free language, we call it as PDA, that is push-down automata. So FA is finite automata, PDA is push-down automata. So the next higher level or of the language is context-sensitive language. CSL is context-sensitive language, and the grammar to represent this context-sensitive language, we call it as context-sensitive grammar, and the abstract machine that can able to recognize this context-sensitive language, we call it as linear bounded automation, which is a lower version of Turing machine, okay, or a deterministic version of a Turing machine, we can say, or linear version of a Turing machine. And next higher level, or the union of, or all these languages, we call it as RE sets, that is recursively enumerable sets. RE is nothing but recursively enumerable sets. These are the languages or containing the languages that can be, some languages can be solvable using some machine, and some may not be solvable using some machines. So the grammars that are used to describe this recursively enumerable sets or language, we call it as unrestricted grammar, and the machine or the abstract model that are used to recognize these language, we call it as a Turing machine, which is similar to our today's or modern day digital computers. So the Turing machine can almost process all set of languages, and it has its own limitations also. We'll see what is it. So this is actually the various classes or various classes in the or type of languages and the grammars and the abstract machines that it can recognize these languages respectively. This is given by Chomsky. So this forms a fundamental basis for the study about the languages, formal languages, as well as about the automata theory. So generally, the problems of automata theory will be of membership problem. Membership problem is nothing but given a string to a machine, and it finds whether it is a member of that language or not. So all these abstract models or abstract machines can solve the problems or solve the problems in the formal languages, and mainly the problem statement will be of deciding whether a given string is member of a language or not. So this type of problem we call it as membership problems. So mostly the problems submitted to the any machine, abstract machine, will be of type the decidable problems, whether it can be, whether it belongs to a language or not. So given a string W represented by a variable W belongs to sigma star. We'll see what is sigma star. So sigma star and a language L over a symbol sigma, decide whether or not it belongs to W, belongs to L. So this is actually the formal statement of a automata problem in automata theory. So for example, say let W is equal to 100011. This is actually the string given, and if you want to decide or if you want to solve a problem or if you want to answer to a question, is W belongs to the language of string of binary digits, then you can use any automata model to solve this problem. Similarly, the another question is W belongs to the language of strings with equal number of zeros and ones. So here this zeros and ones given in the strings, it is actually equal. By and seeing this string, we can able to count the number of zeros and ones. So we can say whether this string is the string belongs to that language. So suppose if there is one more one or one more zero, we can say the string doesn't belong to this language. So how to automate this? So we go for some automation models. So this sort of problems will be addressable by or solvable by the abstract machines called automatas. So the central concept of this automata theory is the formal languages, and I'll give you some simple terminologies in these formal languages. So whatever may be the language, whether it is a natural language, what we speak, English, Tamil, or Hindi, whatever it may be. So the language, whenever we start learning about any language, first we should know what is the alphabet of this language. So what is an alphabet? Alphabet is nothing but finite non-empty set of symbols. So there will be finite number of unique symbols in the language. Like in English, we have A to Z. There are 26 numbers of unique symbols. So using these 26 symbols only, we can form any number of words or sentences or any number of paragraphs and so on. So the whole lot of language, English, is based on this 26 letters. So that is nothing but the alphabet of that language. Similarly, for any language, whether it is a formal language or natural language, any language, the basis is an alphabet, which is nothing but the finite set of symbols, and it should not be an empty set. So it is a basic element of the language, normally denoted by sigma. For example, sigma 1 is equal to A, B, C, D up to Z, the set of letters in English. And sigma 2 is 0, 1, 2, up to 9 is a set of decimal digits. Sigma 3 is another example which consists of two symbols, 0, 1, which we can say it is a set of binary digits. So then comes once if you have an alphabet, then comes the next level construct. We call it as a string. String is nothing but the finite sequence of symbols over some alphabet sigma. That is, by coining these or by concatenating these alphabets or the set of finite symbols, so we can form a string. That is, in natural language, we say it as a word. So in formal languages or in programming language, we used to say it as a string. So string is nothing but finite sequence of symbols over some alphabet sigma. And we can have any empty string also that will be denoted by, that is without any symbol. An empty string that will be denoted by epsilon or empty string. So for example, say ASDF is a string over an alphabet sigma 1, 4, 8, 6, 5. It is another string, is a string over sigma 2. Suppose if say the second string 4, 8, 6, 5. Suppose if it has some alphabet, say A or B with in the string, say 4, 8, 6, 5, A, S, like this, then this we can definitely say that the string doesn't belong to the language represented by the alphabet sigma 2, because the sigma 2 has only 9 possible or 9 digits, only 9 digits. So any string that can be formed using this set of symbols will have or should have only these combination of alphabets or symbols. So if any other symbols included in this, then we can say that doesn't belong to that language. So similarly, the third example is 101011 is a string over an alphabet sigma 3. And so the next higher level construct is the language. So the basic construct is the alphabet, and the next higher level is the combination of or the sequence of these alphabet, we call it a string, And the set of all strings over an alphabet, we call it as a language. So we have a whole lot of words or strings using those alphabets. So all those strings put together, we call it as language. The set of all strings over an alphabet or formed using these alphabets, we call it as languages. Say, for example, the set of all strings over sigma 1 can be, say, that is represented by L1, which is equal to any combinations of the lowercase symbols, like hello, good morning. So it need not give some meaning. It can be any combination of characters. But the meaningful characters, we say it has some semantics, right? The syntax is the syntax of the languages. It should be a combination of the string of alphabets. That's all. So when you talk about the semantics or the meaning of these words only, we go for some meaningful words. So L1 is some set of words. So we have a large number of English words. All words comes under the language L1. Similarly, the set of all strings over sigma 2 is represented by L2, which can be some string of digits from 0 to 9, like 2, 3, 5, 8, 8, 7, 6, 9, or 2, 1. It can be any combination of these characters or these symbols. So similarly, the set of all strings over sigma 3, we represent the language as L3. Any combinations of zeros and ones or any length of string. The string can be any length. Even the null string also belongs to that language, right? The length of the string may be of any length. So that belong to that language. So actually, in programming language, the same terms can be called as tokens, patterns, and lexemes. So tokens, what is a token of a programming language? Token is nothing but an atomic unit in a programming language. That is a word or a string that cannot be further divisible or further, or if you divide that string into divide further, that doesn't give meaning in that programming language. So that we call it as tokens. So we have variables, constants, identifiers, operators. These are all the tokens of the programming language. For example, in C, the alphabet of C is, what is an alphabet of C? The C accepts all lowercase alphabets of English letters and uppercase alphabets of English letters, all numbers from 0 to 9, and some special symbols. So this is actually the alphabet of programming language C. So we call this as a character set of a language, or this high level language. And using these combination of or the sequence of these symbols, so we can form a string in that programming language. So if the meaningful string of the programming language, we call it as tokens. And if you divide that string further, that doesn't give any meaning. So those type of strings, we call it as tokens. And each token has a pattern to represent or rules to represent. So for example, say if it is a variable, so variable has certain rules or patterns to represent that that token. Like for example, for variable, in simple sense, we can say the first letter must be a character, English alphabet, and followed by any number of letters or numbers. So this is actually this string is a valid variable or an identifier, we can say, right? So this is actually the pattern for a token type identifier or a variable. Okay. So for every token, we have a pattern, and the lexeme is nothing but this cohesive sequence of characters that appears in the source program, that matches with the some pattern of a token type. For example, identifier is a token, and identifier has some certain rules to or pattern to form a token type identifier. And say student name, say stud _name, this appears in the source program. So, or any, for example, id or mark. So this, we use it as a variable in a source program. So this variable or this sequence of characters, we call it as a lexeme. This string, we call it as a lexeme. So lexeme is a sequence of characters that matched for some pattern of a token type. And token is nothing but atomic unit in any programming language. And a pattern is, for every token type, we have certain pattern or rules for forming that tokens. So these are some of the terminologies we must know. And so when we enter into the concept of automata theory, we need to know what is an alphabet, what is a string, what is a language, what is a token, what is an pattern or rule, what is an lexeme, and so on. These terms are required. So you just remember all these terms. So when we enter into the concept of automata theory, the initial or very basic model or very simplest model of automata is a finite automata. It involves states and transmission among the states in response to inputs. So whenever it finds some input, it has a transition from one state to another state. So that this type of machine, we call it as a finite automata or finite automation. It's a very simple model, simplest model of automata theory. And the regular expression is a structural notation for describing those patterns. So we have seen what is a pattern is. Pattern is nothing but a rule or a syntax for forming a token type, right? So the regular expression is nothing but a structural notation for describing a pattern. This can be, this is analogous to, in digital circuits, you might have studied about the Boolean expression, right? Boolean expression is nothing but, what is the use of Boolean expression? So whenever, if you want to design any sequential circuit, so first you will be, the problem statement will be in the form of English statements. So that will be expressed with the help of some truth tables. That is, what are the possible inputs, and the possible inputs will be represented using true or false or 0 or 1s. And with the combination of these various possible inputs, what will be the possible output. So this is actually, we call it as truth table. So based on this truth table, we can form a algebraic representation of this truth table, right? So the tabular representation of the statement given in English language is a truth table, and the algebraic representation of this truth table is nothing but a Boolean expression. So the advantage of Boolean expression, so that has some set of operators to form a Boolean expression, right? So and or not operators are used for Boolean expression, right? So using these Boolean expressions, so once if you can represent a sequential circuit in the form of Boolean expression, that is in the structural notation or in an algebraic notation, so you can minimize these expression using, or you can apply some algebraic laws on this expression, so that you can minimize the size of the expression, so that the amount of resources required may reduce, right? So once the Boolean expression is reduced or in the simplest form, then only we go for implementation, right? then we use and or not gate or any universal gates, right? So if you directly go to implement these circuits using these devices like and or not gate or some universal gates, then we may require a very large amount of those gates, but we may not know the circuits using that will result in correct output or not. So, but if it can be represented using some algebraic representation or some mathematical or some structural representation, then we can test all its activities in the form of algebraic notation itself. So once if you satisfied with the algebraic representation and you are reduced the complexity of the circuit, then you can go for implementation. Similar way here in formal languages, the language can be expressed structurally or in the algebraic way of representation or describing the patterns as regular expression. It will see what it is. So the finite automata is a very simplest or simplest form of automata. It involves states and transmissions. So on in response to the input, the transition occurs from one state to another state. It may be to the same state or it can go to a new state. Say we see a simple example of finite automata. Say an on-off switch. So we have switches for lights, fans, and all now in an house. So this is a basic circuitry for on-off switch. So we have a battery, that is power, and the other end we have a bulb to glow, right? And in between these two, we have a switch. So once the switch is open, the current supply will not flow, so the bulb cannot glow, right? So once the switch is on or when it is closed, then there is a possibility of current flow. So that will enable the bulb to glow, right? So this can be represented. This is a small form of automata theory. So this can be represented in the form of states and transitions. Like we have two states, we call it as off state and on state. So if we can take any state as an initial state, we assume that off state is an initial state. Initially, the switch is off, and from that state, we start our action, right? So the action here is the push. So we push or we flip the switch, right? Push, or we can say flip. I have given it as push. We can say flip. And say if you flip the switch, then it will move from off state to on state. So when you do some action on the switch, so it goes from one state to another state. So off and on are the state. The input here is, or the device or the automation model is a switch. The output is, or the requirement or the output we require is lighting the bulb. So the action to be done is push, and here we have two states, that is on state and off state. So here the sigma is push. So that can be represented as 0 or 1, like this. So this is one simple case of finite automata. So whenever the switches has odd number of pushes, then the bulb will glow. So say for example, say initially the switch is in off state, and if you push once, so it goes to on state, it means that the bulb is now glowing, right? So whenever if you do another push, it means that you have done it twice, so it moves on to off state, right? So now the bulb will be off, switched off, right? So again, if you do another push, so then it goes to on state. So now the bulb will glow. So here in this automation model, so even now odd number of pushes, or odd number of inputs will bring the bulb to glow, right? So the bulb is in on state if and only if there was odd number of pushes. So this is one way of finite automata. You can even assume our lift functions or as finite automata. Here, the switch cannot remember the future inputs, right? So it can remember or it can accept only the current input. So based on the current input, it performs its action. So that is why the finite automata does not have any memory to remember the inputs. So that's why it is a very simplest form. So it cannot remember its future inputs. So whenever based on the current input, the system or the automata or the automation model, the machine changes from current state to the next state. So based on that, the output will be decided. So finite automata, so that we any protocols, any functionalities that has protocols or rules that can be represented using finite automata. So finite automata is used as a recognizer of a pattern. So the problems you have to remember that the problems types of any automata
camera, digital cameras, and others. Telecommunication devices like your phone, telephone, and all these electronics and communication.
Yes.
So sorry, ma'am. You can continue.
Okay. Finite automata is used to recognize patterns. So what it does is it takes input character, a character in a string, each character in a string as an input, and changes its state according to the current input. So when desired character symbol appears or found, then a transition occurs or it will stay in the same state. So at the time of transition, it may move to the next state or it may stay in the same state. So finite automata results in two possible output as in the problem statement, like whether it accepts that language or accept that pattern, or it may reject that pattern. Right. So there is the two possible outputs. Either it will accept that string or to be processed, or it may reject the string. So if it belongs to that language defined for that automata, then it accepts. Otherwise, it will reject. So finite automata is a recognizer of a say, for example. So this is actually a finite automata for recognizing the word then. So the first circle. So this is actually the diagrammatic representation of what automata. So we have so many representations. Finite automata is a abstract machine, and we can represent the languages represented by or recognized by finite automation using regular expressions, and that can be represented for our understanding by the graphical notation using the directed graphs, right? Like this, say we have circles and arrows, transitions, right? We call the directed arrows as transitions and the circles as nodes, and the first circle, right? One of the state. So we say each node or each vertex as node, and each one of the node is nothing but a state in a finite automata, right? Node represents a state in a automata. In the graph, we have a circle, we call it as a node or a vertex, and in finite automata it is equivalent to the states, and one of the state will be a starting state. So for any device, so there will be some start point, right? So that state at the time of initiating the machine, so what is the state of the machine? So that we call it as a initial state or a start state. So one of the state will be a start state, and other states like T, TH, THE, these are all some intermediate states, and then Then we have two concentric circles. So this we call it as a final state. So one of the state or some set of states will act as a final state, right? So a start state, and these are all intermediate states, and the arrow lines between two nodes, we call it as transitions. So the transition occurs based on the characters in each string, each characters in the string. So once each character in the string is accepted, it will reach to some final states. Once if it reaches the final state, we can say the automata accepts that string, otherwise it rejects. So this is one finite automata for recognizing the word then. So if you see the abstract model, so we see what are all the representation of this finite automata. So the machine model is finite automata, or the abstract model or the device model is a finite automata. It has three aspects. One is input tape, finite control, and tape reader. So the input tape is has a number of cells. Each cell is having a input symbol, a character of a input symbol. So, and the finite control, which receives this input symbol, on receiving this input symbol, it decides whether to move to the symbol or move to the state or not. So it decides the next state on receiving a particular input from the input tape. So on reading the particular input, it decides or it controls whether to move to the current state or to the next state, right? This is actually called as finite control. And a tape reader. Here the tape reader is nothing but it has a very finite amount of memory called tape, which registers or which stores the input characters. One cell stores one character, like a flip-flop, right? One cell stores one input character of a string. So the tape reader reads the input tape from left to right, normally from bottom to top. So left to right. So normally the tape reader reads the input from left to right. So we have three components in finite automata. One is input tape, which has a very small amount of memory, which is divided into cells, each cell consisting of a character of a string. Another is finite control. So that receives the or reads the current input symbol. So based on the current input symbol, red, it decides to move to decides the transition, whether it move to next state or it stay in the same state. And the tape reader, it reads the tape from left to right. So this is actually the component of a finite state machine or finite automata. So we have two types of finite automata. One is deterministic finite automata. Another is non-deterministic finite automata. We call it as NFA and DFA. So DFA, or the deterministic finite automata, it is a machine. Why it is called deterministic? In the sense, it can stay exactly in only one state on a given time on reading a given input character. That is, on reading each character, each input character, it can go to only one state at a time, right? So that is actually, we call it as deterministic. So on each input, there is one and only one state to which the automation can move from its current state. So that is actually, we call it as deterministic. So so it doesn't have any null moves. That is, without consuming any inputs, there is no possibility of moving from one state to another state. That is, we call it as null moves. So in deterministic finite automata, we cannot have a null move, and it can have only one transition on each input symbol. It can go to only one state on each input symbol from a current state. So that we call it as deterministic finite automata. Another version is A non-deterministic finite automata. This is again just an opposite of deterministic version. So this machine can exist in multiple states at the same time. So from a state, on each input symbol, it can reach to many states or multiple states at a time. So that is, we call it as non-deterministic finite automata at the same time. So these are, I am not going deep into these concepts. I am just telling you what are all this and what is what, right? So this is deterministic finite automata and non-deterministic finite automata. Then we talk about regular languages. Regular languages are nothing but the language recognized by the finite automata or the language described by the regular expression, right? The regular languages are very small class of programming language, we can say. It is a small class of language, and the recognizer of this regular languages finite automata and the strings in the regular languages can be described or can be represented using the algebraic notation or structural notation called regular expression. So normally the regular expression offers a declarative way of expressing the pattern of any string. Like so for example, this is one way of representing a string with any combinations of zeros and ones and ones and zeros. This is an example of one regular expression. I'm not going deep into it. It is again a big chapter. We'll see what is it. Regular expression versus automata. Actually, finite automata, regular expression. In a finite automata, we have two classes of finite automata, two types of finite automata. One is deterministic, another is non-deterministic. All are equivalent in its capability. All are equivalent in its capability in representing the regular language. All can recognize the regular language. So finite automata is a machine-like model. You can assume finite automata is a machine-like model. It has certain inputs, and the input will be the string of that language, and output will be whether it accept or reject that string or not. So this is actually automata, and regular expression is, it is like a syntax, like a program, like an expression, or like a what we can say an expression like, or an syntax like or pattern for representing that string given as an input to the automata. So that we call it as regular expression. And the regular expression is more powerful than automata, or that is both are equal in the sense both can recognize the regular language, but the regular expression is used in many environments. Unix, the persons who are familiar with the Unix environment may know about the commands in the Unix. Like for example, say in bash shell is nothing but interpreter in Unix. So Unix is an interpreted language. So you have to give a command in a command line as a command line operator. So that command line operator will be interpreted, right? Interpreted, or it will verify or it will validate whether that command is a valid command or not. So once if it is a valid command, then it accepts that command and it performs the operation of that command. Otherwise, it rejects the command is invalid, right? So grep is one of the command in Unix, any Unix interpreters. Grep is nothing but mainly in bash shell. Grep is nothing but global regular expression print, right? So that is, it is similar to find and replace in Windows, right? This command is similar to the functionality of find and replace in a Windows environment. So in Windows, we use mouse to use icons or menus to perform the actions, whereas in Unix environment we use the commands to do the activities or to do that action, or we have to give a command. So grep is one of the command to represent or to do the find and replace activity. So to find the statement, that is, there will be set of statements. So we have to find some pattern of a or some substring in the set of statements. So so we need to form a pattern for that set of statements. So we use regular expressions for that. Similarly, for BI editors or it can be any editors. In any editors, we use regular expressions for representing the commands. Like in Perl scripting also, we use regular expressions. In lexical analyzer, like in a compiler. In a compiler, so the compiler is nothing but, what is a compiler? Compiler is a program. We check whether the compiler will check whether the program is belonging to that language or not, right? So once if it belongs to that language, then it translates into machine language. So that is nothing but a compiler. So it's again a finite automata, right? So it is again an automata theory. It applies the automata theory. So compiler design is fully with the help of automata theory, or it uses this automations to implement or to design the compilers, right? So in the first phase of the compiler is to check whether each word in a program, a source program, each word or each string in the source program is correct or not. That we call it as lexical analyzer, and we have a specialized formal language or programming language called Lex or Flex, right? This again uses this regular expression. So in short, we can say automata is a machine model, or more like a machine. It has some set of input. We call it as strings, in the form of strings, and output in the form of accept or reject, whether it accepts the string or it may reject the string. So automata is a recognizer of a regular language, and regular expression is a format for format or notation for describing a regular language, which is recognizable by the automata. And this regular expression not only for representing these automata string, also is useful in many environments like Unix, Perl scripts, and Lex or Flex, which is applicable for designing the lexical analyzer of a compiler. So finite automata, so we have three concepts we studied. One is finite automata, another is regular expression. So this is the finite automation model of a language using the alphabet A and B. And this finite, this can be represented using a regular expression A plus B. Here, each regular expression, whenever we say an expression, we have some operators. So in regular expression also we have three operators: union, concatenation, and closure. So I'm not going deep into it. You just go through whenever, if you want to study about this subject, you need to know these terms. And both accepts the regular language represented by the alphabet A and B. So regular expression is a syntactical or structural representation. Finite automata, whether it is a deterministic version or non-deterministic version, or it is an epsilon transition version of finite automata, it is like an automation or a device or machine. Both accepts the regular language, which is a class of a formal language, very small class of formal language. So this is about finite automata. So I have touched the terms in finite automata. And if you see the applications of finite automata, as I said, finite automata applies in compilers and interpreters that is in the first phase of a compiler. So in the first initial step of a compiler is, first we need to recognize whether each string in the source program belongs to the language or not. So for that, we have to read each string, and we have to construct a finite automata for all the token types in any programming language. So we have to input a string in that finite automata. If it reaches any final state, then it means that it accepts. Otherwise, it is not belonging to a particular language. So lexical analyzer or scanner, it is a first phase of a compiler. It uses the finite automata. Next, in text editing, pattern matching. So wherever these the extension idea is a Patricia tree or suffix tree. This is a substring matching tree, right? So all these uses this regular expression or finite automata concepts. So wherever we have a pattern matching, so even in Word, in a word processor, Microsoft Word, we whenever we type the characters, it tells us that this there is a spelling mistake in the word. So that again a pattern matching uses the finite automation model. So wherever there is a pattern matching problems, then we can apply or we can use this finite automata for machine for that model. And the regular expressions are used in, as I said, Unix, even in DTD in XML, data type definition declaration, right? So in XML, that we declare the markup languages, right? In HTML, the markup statements or the tags are already defined, but in XML, we can customize or we can declare our own tags, right? So the each tag, the group of each tags, we call it as a file of tags. So that we call it as DTD file. So that will describe the XML file, right? XML file. So that is you can have your own description of tags in XML using the DTD concept. So with the help of regular expression only. So similarly, finite automata model, wherever there is a protocol in electronic sequential circuit, model checking, wherever there is a model checking, the finite automation model is applied, can be applied. So you can think of any problems that applies pattern matching, right? Like spell checker, grammar check in word processor, file search, directory search, the search engines, pattern searching in search engines. So wherever the pattern matching type of problem appears, so the finite automation model is actually being used or it can be applied. So the next one is, sorry, the slide is exchanged. So the next comes the context-free grammars. So in the next higher class of grammar, we call it as context-free grammars. The first class of grammar is regular grammar or regular expression. In the next class of the higher class of grammar is context-free grammar. So the limitations in regular grammar is, if you want to remember certain number of occurrences in the language, it cannot, the regular grammar or the finite automation cannot remember these occurrences of repetitions, right? The repetitions or the recursive nature or the iterative pattern of that strings cannot be remembered with the help of regular expression or finite automata, since it has limited memory, right? So that's why we go for next higher level of machine or machine model. We call it as the grammar that used to describe, or the notation used to describe the statements of the programming language, we call it as context-free grammars. So in any programming language, the first step is to represent the words or the tokens of the language. So the next step is to represent how to represent the statements of the program, right? The statements of the program. So each statement have certain structures. So the way for representing or describing the statements of a programming structure, we call it as context-free grammar. It is more powerful than finite automata or regular expression, but it still has some limitations. Even it cannot define all possible formal language. It has restrictions also, right? And it is useful for nested structure, right? So the language which consisting of the nature of nested structures or recursive structures. So such type of language or class of strings or class of statements can be represented using context-free grammars. So the basic idea of this context-free grammar is we have 4 notations in variables. Basic idea is to use variables to stand the set of strings, and these variables are defined recursively in terms of another variable, and we have recursive rules, that is productions, that involves that have some operations like concatenation and the alternates of rules can be defined using variables. Like for example, you assume an English language, right? So in English language, we have a certain set of words which can be further described, right? Say for example, fruits. Fruits is a word in English. So we cannot show an we cannot show an object if we say fruit. If we say take a fruit, you may not know which fruit you have to take, right? So yeah. Which fruit we so this the word fruit represent a class of all fruits, right? So so that can be further described. So we say fruit is a variable which can be recursively defined, right? Fruit or furniture. So there are so many such words that can be further described. So those words or those terms, we call it as variables or non-terminals, right? And we have terminals. Like for example, terminals is equivalent in languages. Say for example, in English, like English natural languages, it is equivalent to, or it is analogous to a word apple, grapes, orange. So these are all, this directly represented, this cannot be further described. That is, for example, it directly describes an object, right? So that we call it as terminals in context-free grammar sense. In context-free grammar sense, we call it as terminals, variables, and one word in a language will represent the entire language, right? Say for example, in English, English is a word. English is a word which represents the whole language, right? So English is a word, like in Tamil also. Tamil is a word with the help of the string of Tamil characters. This, when I say Tamil, it represents the class of entire Tamil language. Excuse me, sir. Hello?
Ma'am, tell me, ma'am.
Why do I get...
ma'am, actually you chose the pen in your screen, ma'am. Use the erase button, ma'am. There is a erase button in your screen left side.
Sorry for the inconvenience.
No issue, ma'am. No issue, ma'am. நீங்க pen use பண்ணிட்டீங்க. Erase பண்ணுங்க.
actually எனக்கு தெரியாம ஏதோ ஓபன் ஆயிடுச்சு. Okay, so this is a basic idea of any grammar. Grammar has four terms. One is variables. Variables are a set of strings that can be further described. Like for example, in English, we say fruit, furniture. So it's like a class. It represents a class of objects, right? So next comes a non-terminal. Non-terminal is which represents the yes. I don't know why I'm getting like this.
Again, you have chosen the pencil or pen.
I have not chosen anything. I have stopped. How to stop it?
There is a in a left side there is a eraser, ma'am. You use that eraser, ma'am.
Yeah, I have eraser.
That is a pen, ma'am. There is a symbol called eraser. You can erase it, ma'am, and give escape at the final.
Further escape. Is it okay?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's clear now.
So whenever I move the mouse, I think I am getting this.
You have chosen the pencil, ma'am. You remove that pencil, pen or the tool, ma'am. Either you can use your keyboard, ma'am, for go for the next slides. Or else you can close the slide and reopen it, ma'am.
I have removed it now.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So CFG, that is context-free grammar, has variables. We call it as non-terminals, a finite set of other symbols, each of which represents a language. So here, each word in a variable represent a class of or a set of strings. So next comes a terminal symbol. Terminal symbols of it is the symbols of alphabet of the language which is being defined. This is like just like a apple. You assume variables are like fruit or furniture. Terminals are like apple or chair or something like this. It belongs to a respective class. Then comes a start symbol. So one among the set of variable represent the whole language. Like for example, in English, as I said, English is a word. It is an English word that represent the whole class of English language. Like Tamil is a Tamil word that represent or that describes the entire class of Tamil words or statements. So that we call it as a start symbol. Then we have a production. Production is nothing but rules for forming a statement or recursive structure in a language. That is, the variables can be represented or can be described using productions. So in context-free grammars, we have rules for forming a production. At the left side of the production, we have a single variable, and at the right side of the production, we have string of variables and terminals. I hope you have understood what is variables, terminals, start symbol, and productions. We have four tuples in CFG, context-free grammar. Context-free grammar is nothing but a recursive structure or a notation to describe the statements in the programming language, right? Statements in the programming language or the formal language. So, so the class of language described or recognized by or represented by this context-free grammar is called as context-free language. So the language defined by the context-free grammars is called as context-free language. So as in the previous case, we said the language represented or described by regular expression, we call it as regular language. Here we call the language represented or denoted by the context-free grammars, we call it as context-free language. And there are CFLs that are not regular languages. That is, certain languages that are not regular maybe maybe belong to context-free languages, CFL. It can be a CFL. Context, it may not be a regular language, but maybe a CFL. As we seen in the Chomsky hierarchy, CFL is a superset of regular set, right? CFL is a superset of regular language. So all languages accepted by or recognized by or represented by regular language or regular expression can be represented by context-free grammar also. So we have, suppose we have a language L of G is equal to 0 power n, 1 power n, such that n greater than or equal to 0. This is one language. Say this language is not a regular language because we have a set of strings consisting of equal number of zeros and ones. So this language has a set of strings that consisting of equal number of zeros and ones, where n greater than or equal to 0, right? So even empty string can belong to this language. So to recognize this language, that is the language consisting of strings having equal number of zeros and ones. So once you need to remember how many number of zeros you encountered and how many number of ones you encountered, then you have to match or to validate whether or to decide whether this string belongs to that language. That is, if the number of zeros and number of ones are equal in number, then you can say that string belongs to that language. Otherwise, the automata should reject, right? But in finite automata, since we don't have memory to store the count of these the counts of these zeros and ones, we don't have any storage, so we can't store the count of the zeros and ones, the number of zeros and ones. So we cannot recognize this language using regular language, or it doesn't belong to regular language, or we cannot represent using regular expression, or it cannot be recognized using finite automata, whereas this can be represented or this can be recognized using context-free language, represented using context-free language. So, but not all languages are CFLs. So all regular languages are CFLs, but not all formal languages are CFLs. Okay, so CFLs can count 2 things, not 3 things. Actually, we have the language L of G, 0 power n, 1 power n. We have the count of 2, right? The zeros and ones. So it has the context-free language, or the recognizer of context-free languages is capable of counting 2 things, not 3, right? So it again has a limited memory. So the automata used for recognizing the context-free grammar or the context-free language, we call it as PDA, push-down automata. Push-down automata is an automation equivalent to CFG in language defining power. It means that that can be represented or described using context-free grammars can be recognized using the model, automation model or machine model called push-down automata. So both has the equal power. I think I should not use the mouse. Okay, so only the so here we have the push-down automata. Push-down automata is to recognize the context-free grammar. Context-free grammar represents the context-free language. Both accepts the describes the context-free language. So only the non-deterministic. So here also we have 2 push-down automatas. One is deterministic push-down automata. The other one is non-deterministic push-down automata. So the non-deterministic version of push-down automata defines all CFLs, that is context-free language. All the statements in context-free languages can be recognized using only non-deterministic push-down automata, whereas deterministic version of push-down automata cannot recognize all statements in CFL. So it can recognize most of the statements in the programming language. So push-down automata is nothing but a non-deterministic finite automation coupled with a stack. So actually we have seen what is finite automata. Finite automata had the input tape, the input symbols, and the reader, right? The finite control and the reader. So the same machine added with the stack, that is an extra memory to it in the form of stack, then we call it as a push-down automata. So finite push-down automata is nothing but finite automata plus a stack. It has an input input tape, control unit, and a stack with a infinite finite size. So this is actually the definition of push-down automata. So we have deterministic push-down automata, another is non-deterministic push-down automata. A deterministic push-down automata means every state or stack combination has exactly one transition. So from one state to another state, it has only one transition on each input symbol or stack symbol. I am not going deep into what is the content of the state symbol or stack symbol. You have to read it, because again it will get in deep into it. So you assume that the stack or the tape, input tape, contains the input symbol, that is the words of each statement in a programming language will be stored in an input tape. Okay, and no E transitions allowed in deterministic version. That is, null transition is not possible in E transition. Without consuming any input symbol, it cannot have a transition from a current state to a next state. So that is actually deterministic. So on each input or symbol or stack symbol, that is here in push-down automata, the transition occurs based on the current input symbol, the combination of current input symbol and the stack symbol. So with each this combination, it moves from one state to another state. So on each such combination, deterministic version can go to only exactly one state, whereas in non-deterministic version can move to more than one state. Here in deterministic version is less powerful than non-deterministic version, or in other words, non-deterministic finite push-down automata is more powerful than deterministic push-down automata. So you have to remember that in finite automata, both deterministic, non-deterministic, and E transition, NFA, that is DFA, NFA, and ENFA all have equal power in accepting the language. Deterministic FA, DFA, NFA, non-deterministic finite automata, and ENFA and the regular expression all has equal capability of accepting or recognizing or describing the regular language. But in case of push-down automata, the non-deterministic push-down automata is more powerful. It means that it can recognize a large set of context-free languages, whereas deterministic push-down automata can recognize only a very small class of context-free languages. So both has not equal power. It may be asked in many GATE questions and all. And the applications of push-down automata is, so in designing the compiler, the first phase of a compiler is to check whether each string or each word in a source program belongs to that language. That is, if it is a C source program, each word in a source program, C program, belongs to C language or not, right? But the next step, once if all the words in a C program belongs to a source program, then we have to check each statement. Each statement in a source program belongs to that language or not, or it is a valid language or not, right? How do you say a statement in a source program is valid or not? For each statement in a programming language, we have a syntax. Say, for example, we have a syntax for loop. We have a syntax for if statement. We have a syntax for expression statement. We have a syntax for operation statement. We have a syntax for assignment statement. So whatever may be the type of statement in programming language, we have a syntax or the rules to represent that statement, right? So once that statements in the programming language matches with this syntax or the patterns or the rules, then we say that statement belongs to this language. Otherwise, that statement will be rejected, or it will compiler will report an error to the user. So push-down automata is used in the second phase of a compiler called syntax analyzer. It analyzes the syntax of the statement in a programming language. So we call that phase of the construct, we call it as a parser, right? So for designing a parser, push-down automata is actually used. And wherever we have the recursive structure or the implementation of recursion occurs, the push-down automata can be applied. That is for implementing stack applications, like for evaluating the arithmetic expression, like the problems like Tower of Hanoi. So wherever the recursive nature of problem occurs or the hierarchical nature of problem occurs, we can apply this push-down automata. So push-down, the applications of push-down automata is wherever the recursive constructs of language appears, we can apply push-down automation. Push-down automation model can be used. So the next higher level of model is, or automation model is, Turing machine.
How many slides are there, ma'am?
Turing, yes.
How many more slides are there, ma'am, to complete?
Maybe 10.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. You can continue.
Maybe 10 slides.
Okay,
I'll finish it within 15.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
So Turing machine is a abstract machine model. I'm not writing anything. How I am getting this? I'm not doing anything. Hello.
Ma'am, kindly share your screen, ma'am.
Yeah. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Turing machine is an automata that models the power of a real computer. This is equivalent to a model of a real computer. It has it can recognize almost all languages, all class of language. Even Turing machine cannot compute or cannot find the solution for certain languages. So we need to find out which sort of languages or which set of problems can be solvable using Turing machine and which cannot be solvable. So that is actually the study of decidability. So decidability in the sense which types of problems can be solvable using Turing machine, which cannot be solvable. So we have to distinguish between tractable and intractable. That is, all decidable problems are tractable. Tractable in the sense, so whenever you give some set of inputs, some set of strings, so the Turing machine accepts if it belongs to that language, or it rejects if doesn't belong to the language. This type of problem, or this machine, this type of problem we say tractable problems or decidable problems. So there are certain types of problems where we can, that is, for a given string, the Turing machine can accept, that is, for a valid string, it accepts the string if it is a valid string, but it cannot decide whether it has to reject or not if an invalid string is given to the Turing machine. Okay, so that we call it as a undecidable problem or intractable problems. I hope you can understand the difference. So decidability in the sense, for a Turing machine that accepts the input string, and if it is capable, if it is able to decide, it is belongs to the language if it is, if the string given is a valid string, and it should be able to decide whether rejects the string if it doesn't belong to that language, right? So given a Turing machine, you give an input string, so it accepts if it is valid, it rejects if it is invalid. Then you say it is a decidable problem. That is, the string or the language belonging to the string belonging to that language, we call it as a decidable language or decidable problem, right? But in some cases, there may be a problem in which the strings give the input given to the Turing machine. If it is a valid input, it may accept, it accepts. But if it is invalid input, the Turing machine may not know whether to reject or accept. So it is in confusion, right? So that type of problem, we call it as undecidable or intractable problems. So Turing machine is a automation model which is capable of computing or recognizing almost all class of languages. In specific, we can say recursively enumerable language. I'll tell you what is recursively enumerable language, right? So you should know these terms, right? So the Turing machine consists of input tapes. As in finite automata, it also has input. Finite automata and pushdown automata, it also has input tapes, but it has an infinite amount of memory, right? So the input tape can be multiple tapes. It can be more than one tapes. Multiple tapes and multiple tracks can be there in the input tape. So there is no limitations in the memory, right? So that is actually input tape. Again, as in previous finite automation models, the input tapes has cells, and each cell stores the symbol of an alphabet, finite alphabet. And the action performed by the Turing machine is based on the state and the tape symbol. So based on the current state and the tape symbol read by the header, it changes its it goes to the next state. That is, it has a transition. So based on the current state and the current input symbol, it decides to go to next state, or it retains the state or changes its state, right? So rewrite the symbol, and that is action is based on the state and the tape symbol under the head. Change state or rewrite the symbol and move the head one square left or right. Here the tape can move, or the header can move in both directions. In case of finite automation and pushdown automation, it can move in one direction only, right? But in case of Turing machine, the machine can read the input on any direction. Okay, so this is actually the components of the Turing machine. So we have seen the term decidable problem. So decidable problems has an algorithm to determine the answer, right? So that class of problems, we call it as decidable problem. Any problem that has an algorithm to determine the solution to that problem, or for a given input, we say that problem is decidable problem. For example, finding whether given number P is prime or not. So we can able to decide, if given a number, say if I say 7, we can say whether this number is a prime number or not, right? Say if I give some number year, whether it is a leap year or not, we can decide by given a year, say 2020 is a leap year or not. So such type of problems we call it as decidable problems. So say for example, in this example, find whether P is prime or not. Say given some number, that is a given input, say 7 is a given input, and given that is an algorithm to determine whether this number 7 is prime or not, right? So if 7 is prime, then it accepts, then 7 is not prime, then it rejects, right? So this statement of problem has a solution or has an algorithm, then we say this problem is a decidable problem, right? Say there are so many type of problems that comes under decidable problem. And what is an undecidable problem? The problem that has no algorithm to decide or determine the answer for a given input, or which have an algorithm that answers for some input. So this type of problem we call it as undecidable problem. That is, for certain class of certain class of problems, we have a algorithm that accepts for given input if it is a valid, and sometimes there may not, that machine may not accept or reject if you give an invalid input, right? So that is, we don't have an algorithm to decide whether to accept or decide if an invalid input is given to that automation, right? That sort of problem we call it as undecidable problem. For example, say you have a equation a power n plus b power n is equal to c power n, where n is greater than 2, right? So suppose if you want to find a algorithm for this, so we may not, so given a string, we may not say, or that algorithm may not decide the given string belongs to this language or not. It is very difficult to say, or it is very complex to say that belongs to this language. That is, there is no 3 positive integers a and b. This is because that is this. There is I said there is no algorithm to decide a power n is plus b power n is equal to c power n, since there is no 3 positive integers a, b, c that satisfy this equation. So we cannot write an algorithm for this, right? Since this equation is not possible, so we cannot write an algorithm for this class of language. So it cannot decide whether that belongs to this language or not. So such type of problems we call it as undecidable problem. Like for example, and another example is, or the language over alphabet 0, 1 closure is countable, right? That is, the string of all combinations of zeros and ones are countable. Can you say any combinations of zeros and ones are countable in numbers? We cannot decide, right? We cannot say there is countable number of combinations of zeros and one strings, right? With the help of any combination of any length, we can't count the number of strings belonging to the language. That is uncountable actually. So we cannot write an algorithm to check whether the language over an alphabet 0, 1 closure is countable. To count the number of strings of this combination of zeros and ones, we cannot write an algorithm to count that. So that sort of problems we call it as undecidable problems. So we have the formal languages have three classes. One is recursive language, another is recursively enumerable language, another is non-recursively enumerable language. So recursive language is that can be expressed using recursive structures or structural notations like context-free grammars, right, or regular expression, right? So the example of recursive languages, recursive context-free language and regular languages are example of recursive language. So any string that belonging to regular language or context-free language can be recognizable using finite automata and push-down automata respectively, right? So that class of language we call it as decidable. Recursively enumerable language is, so recursive language is decidable. That is, a language L is said to be recursive if there exists a Turing machine which will accept all strings in L and rejects if the strings does not belonging to L, right? So that we call it as recursive language. So for recursive language, we have a Turing machine that accepts all the string that belonging to the language and it rejects the string that does not belonging to that language. That sort of problems we call it as a decidable problem. The Turing machine will halt on every time and give an answer. That is the Turing machine, that the Turing machine designed for this recursive languages will halt at one point of time after accepting or rejecting that string on each given a input. So once if you give an input, it will halt either by accepting the string or by rejecting a string, right? So Turing machine, so that this type of problems, decidable problems, we call it as halt problems also, right? That is, you can able to halt after computing that problem, right? So that is, we call it as recursive language. Recursive languages are decidable. That is, if you give any string belonging to recursive language, the Turing machine accepts if it belongs to that language and rejects if it doesn't belong to that language. And it halts in one point in time after either accepting or rejecting after reading the input string. Recursively enumerable languages are undecidable. So what do you mean by recursively enumerable language? A language L is said to be recursively enumerable language if there exists a Turing machine which will accept, or accept in the sense it will halt, it will stop, right? The machine will stop or halt for all input string which belongs to L, right? But it may or may not halt for all input string which are not in L. So that type of language we call it as recursively enumerable language. Recursively enumerable is a language L is said to be recursively enumerable. For recursively enumerable language, we have a Turing machine. That Turing machine accepts the string if it belongs to that language, but it may not know whether to accept or rejects if that string does not belong to, or that if invalid string is given to that Turing machine. So that class of language we call it as recursively enumerable language. That recursively enumerable languages are undecidable. We cannot decide whether the Turing machine will halt or not on invalid input. And there is another class of language we call it as non-recursively enumerable language. So that is also undecidable. So only recursive enumerable languages, recursive language only decidable. Both recursively enumerable and non-recursively enumerable are not decidable. That is, it means that it is undecidable. So recursively enumerable language any solution to that problem, then we say it is non-recursively enumerable language. So in formal languages, we have three classes of languages. One is recursive language. Recursive language halts when it has a Turing machine. That is, we can have an algorithm or have a Turing machine and it accepts the string if it is valid and it rejects the string if it is invalid. So this is recursive language. And recursively enumerable language, which is a superset of recursive language, which has a Turing machine, but it accepts only when it has a when the string is valid. But if the string is invalid, the machine doesn't know whether to accept or to reject. This is recursively enumerable. The superset of these two languages, non-recursively enumerable languages, that is, we cannot construct a Turing machine for these languages. That is, we don't have a solutions to these language. So the applications of Turing machine is for solving any recursively enumerable problems. That is, and for understanding the complexity theory, that is what sort of problems can be, which sort of problems are decidable and undecidable, to classify the problems, whether it is decidable or undecidable, whether it is a recursive or recursively enumerable or non-recursively enumerable. So to find the complexity of the or to understand the complexity of the problems, this Turing machines are used for implementation of neural networks and for implementation of any robotic applications, artificial intelligence. So all these applications, these Turing machines are used. And other applications of in general, say the applications of finite automata in NLP. NLP is natural language processing for speech recognition, spelling corrections, information retrieval, language recognition, morphological analysis of strings or morphological analysis of strings, dictionary compilation. So wherever the pattern matching type of problems are there. So all these problems have the pattern matching type of problems. So all these problems is can be solvable or can be recognizable, or you can construct a finite automation for these sort of problems. And DFAs in probability theory, like instead of fixed transition rules, the transitions were like the page ranking algorithm, the Markov chain model, that is to find the relative importance of the web pages. That uses the page rank algorithm, that in turn uses the probability and statistical model called Markov chain model. It's a probabilistic model. That a model again uses the DFA, deterministic finite automata, for to construct the Markov chains. And the automata theory can be even applied in biology to that is in life science, like life games. There is a game called a life game. It has some certain rules and conditions. To it is a simulation of our the fittest theory, right? The evolution of life, right? So that life science is a biological game that emulates or that simulates the the evolution of human lives or the living organisms, right? So such types of problem, because it has some certain set of rules and patterns, so there also we can apply there also we can apply this automata theory. So actually, a biologist, Stephen Wolfram, he argues us that the entire universe can be describable as a machine with a finite set of states and rules with a single initial condition. The entire universe can be modeled using finite automation. That is his inference on studying this automata theory. So he relates automata theory to a wide variety of scientific problems like fluid flow, snowflake and crystal formation, quartz theory, cosmology, financial analysis. So, I mean, according to Stephen Wolfram, he states that the entire universe can be modeled using finite state machine.
Ma'am, kindly deselect that pen option, ma'am, so that you may not get that problem. Yes.
Thank you for patient listening. Hope you have received some information. This is a very vast subject only, and very what we can say, very complex to understand. Normally, our computer science students will find this degree stopping paper, theory of computation as a degree stopping. But if you understand the concept, this is a very simplest one, and you can explore more on these problems. If there is any queries, you can ask through chat box.
Already participants have sent the questions through the chat box, ma'am.
Yes, you can.
Yes, ma'am. You can review that. Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, ma'am.
I couldn't deselect my pen. How I do?
You just close the slide, ma'am. Just close the slide, ma'am, and reopen it.
Is there any queries? Sir, if there is any queries, if you have consolidated, you may ask.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You can also see in the chat window, ma'am. There is an option called near polls chat is there, ma'am. You can click that. You click the chat. Near the share screen, ma'am. Can you able to see the chat window?
Yes.
Yeah, is there, ma'am. You open it and drag there. There are some questions are there, ma'am.
Yes, definitely. I will share the PPT.
You scroll
I
up.
Find any questions? The time complexity and phase complexity of the automation is, as I said, finite automation has very less space. That is, you can say there is no memory in finite automata. The finite automation has no memory, whereas the push down automata has some small class of memory in form of stack, and the Turing machine has infinite amount of memory, right? In theoretically, it has infinite amount of memory, but practically we don't have infinite memory. We have finite amount of memory for any digital computers or any devices, digital devices, computational devices. We have finite model, but it can store infinite amount of memory. The complexity depends upon the problems, not on the machines. Finite automation has the limitations over, that is, it can accepts only the regular languages, whereas the push-down automata can accept or can recognize only context-free languages. So how to decide which is regular and which is non-regular? There is a theorem called the pumping lemma. That lemma can be applied. Those who have studied theory of computation may know this. There is a theorem called the pumping lemma. So if you apply this lemma or the theorem, or we can say lemma is nothing but a theorem, or just like a theorem. So if you apply that theorem, we can check whether that language belongs to regular language or not. So if it belongs to regular language, then that can be defined using finite automata. Otherwise, it cannot be defined, or it cannot be recognized using finite automata. Stack is it is a memory. It is a small amount of memory. Stack is nothing but a small amount of memory. But the memory is divided into cells. You can input and output the data through one end only. That is last in, first out. The last inputted last inputted value can only be taken out, or can be read first. So that we call it as a stack. Stack is nothing but a data structure, or it is a small amount of memory. It's just like say if you're arranging your books in a order, that is one after the other, one above the other, it is called stack. So the book which is placed at the top can be removed first, right? So this is an example of stack. So you can add any number of values or any number of books on above it, and of course it has some limitations. The stack has some limited memory. So once the input that is placed on the top of the stack will be removed first, or can be read first. Real-time application, I told you, no, like in word processor, the compiler itself is an example of finite automation. It uses finite automata, and it uses push-down automata, finite automata for lexical analysis. That is to recognize the words in the programming language, source program. Right? If you have a source program, so you'll have the sequence of words and the sequence of strings together. We call as a statement in a program, right? To recognize whether each statement in a programming language, we use finite automata, and to check whether each sentence in the programming language is correct or not, whether it is syntactically correct or not. So that we use push-down automata. That is for designing a parser. Right? For designing a parser, we use push-down automata. For designing a scanner or the lexical analyzer, we use a finite automata. And there are so many, like XML, DTDs are based on, and Unix. I have given so many examples of real-time examples only. So all uses wherever there is a pattern matching problems, that uses this finite automata theory only. Like in Google search, file search, directory search, your spell checker. So all these are based on finite automation model only. DFA is a deterministic finite automation. So this can recognize regular language. DFA can recognize regular language. LBA is a linear bounded automata. So that can recognize context sensitive language. But in practical, we don't use context sensitive language. That again, this is a class just above the context free language. or superset of the context-free language. So it is LBA is nothing but a linear version of, or deterministic version of a Turing machine, you can say. Right. So again, it can recognize decidable problems, and it cannot decide or recognize undecidable problems or non-E or E's. Right. So whatever the limitations of Turing machines are will be applied to LBA also. DFA is a very small. It is a finite automata. It's a small amount of smallest form of automation. It can recognize regular language. In the Chomsky hierarchy, DFA is in the very smallest subset. Thank you. Any other question?
Okay, ma'am.
I hope the session may be useful. I have given the overall picture of the theory of computation or the automata theory. I couldn't get into deep into it. If you have a session on some finite automata alone, we can in depth see how we can construct a finite automata for a string. We can even take a sample language, and you can construct a finite automata for this, how the finite automata behaves, how it recognizes the strings. So these are all the deep things. Since the title is the overall picture, I have given the overall picture about this subject.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. It was a wonderful session and very much informative, ma'am. Since it was a problematic paper, you have created the interest on the entire session, ma'am.
Yes.
We doesn't get bored, ma'am, and we got more ideas on automata theory and its application. Once again, I'll thank you, ma'am. We will meet you in some other webinars in future, ma'am. We can plan for that, as you said, for
Yes,
finite
sure,
automata
sir.
also, ma'am.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
Sure,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Now,
Thank you, sir.
I kindly request our Kalichalu madam to conclude the session, ma'am.
Thank you, patient, for
Yeah.
all the participants,
Yes,
for
yes.
patient listening.
Good afternoon to one and all. On behalf
My
of
contact number
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
94431 45528.
Ma'am, just repeat it, ma'am.
94431
94431
45528.
45528. Okay, I can
My
post
contact
this
number.
on the chat box also, ma'am. Your number.
Okay, I'll give you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, ma'am. Shall we conclude the program, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Kalichalu, ma'am. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Good afternoon to one and all. On behalf of Computer Science and Engineering Department, I would like to thank the management, respected Principal Sir, Vice Principal Ma'am, for guidance and support to make this webinar in a grand success. I take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks to the resource person, Mrs. K. Chandraprabha Ma'am, Associate Professor and HOD of CSE, Azhagappa Chettiar Government College of Engineering and Technology, Karaikudi, who gave excellent presentation on automata theory and its application. It was so informative and useful to all the participants of this webinar. I would also thank our HOD Ma'am and all the faculty members of CSE, both teaching and non-teaching, for their support and encouragement to make this kind of webinar. Finally, I thank all the participants who attend this session. Now, you will be receiving the feedback link for this session through WhatsApp group. Once if you submit the feedback form, you will receive e-certificates immediately. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.